Hi, everyone, and welcome to our episode of Ramadan for Reflections. And we have our respected guest here today. Got Ertan Karapazlı, Turkish Cypriot journalist and also co-founder of Cezire Dernegi. I have two South London guys. It's Alimullah from South London, who's our teacher, and also Ahmet Barud. And shortly we shall have Yusuf Ahmed, co-founder of Cyprus Islamic Association, and also our researcher and historian, and also co-founder of Cezire Association, Mustafa Qureshi. We welcome any of your comments this evening, and welcome to the show. Welcome, guys, to the show. How are you, Ertan?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. So we're coming to the end of Ramadan. Just want to hear your reflections upon Ramadan. If we can start with you, how's your Ramadan, or can I say Ramazan, been?
It's been okay generally. In terms of the fasting element of it, I've just got on with it. A lot of people, when they're fasting in Ramadan, they say that they are looking for a particular spiritual feeling through fasting, through extra acts of worship. For me, because I generally practice Islam anyway outside of Ramadan, I don't necessarily get that extra spiritual feeling from those acts of worship. But I feel that overall, in everything that I do outside of worship, in terms of how I'm treating people, how my behavior and character improves, I get a spiritual boost from that. So yeah, I think my Ramadan has been quite good, and it's especially been interesting, being that we've been in lockdown, and I'm actually quite grateful that this lockdown has come during Ramadan, because usually when everyone's out and about and I'm fasting, I can't go to cafes, I can't go out, I start feeling a bit like I'm left out of what's going on. But actually, no, I think now that everyone is in lockdown, they are all kind of participating in Ramadan one way or another, whether they like it or not. So it's been quite interesting in that sense.
That's really interesting because I was thinking that the same when we actually got into the lockdown. I thought, okay, so this is probably the first Ramadan that we're going to be in this kind of situation, being locked down. I actually thought the lockdown would probably end before the end of Ramadan, but it hasn't, and it's had its challenges as well, though, hasn't it, Ertan? It's had its pros and its cons, and one of them is the closure of the mosque. Could you discuss a little bit about that? How has that affected not only our community in the UK, but communities outside of the UK as well?
Yeah, I think it definitely feels strange for a lot of us, because I like to go to the mosque at least once a week for the Friday prayer, and I've actually lost count. When was the last time I went? I can't even remember. It's been at least 6, 7 weeks, which is probably the first time for me in about 12 years that I've not been to a mosque for this long. So
Yeah.
it does feel weird, and you take it for granted when you're able to go. When you're able to go, you don't go as much as you should. But now I think, for me personally, I'm missing the feeling of joining the congregation and listening to the Friday sermon. And for a lot of people, um, they only go to the mosque on Bayram. They only go to the mosque for Eid. So this is usually like, Saturday or Sunday, I believe is Eid, isn't it? Sunday
Yeah.
is usually it would usually be a big day for a lot of people. It's like the only time of the year they go to the mosque, and they're not going to be able to go. So it's going to be interesting to see how people's relationship with the mosque and religion changes after the lockdown and after Ramadan is over. I think we're going to see a rush of people who've been taking it for granted, just suddenly trying to go to the mosque and renew their faith.
That thanks for sharing that. Could you also explain to our viewers what kind of activities would actually take place in the mosque during Ramadan? What kind of activities would they be, and especially the last 10 days of in Ramadan? What happens in the mosque? Ethan, can you just like briefly tell us?
Well, there are some cultural differences depending on where you are and who you're with, what community you come from, but there are certain constants, regardless of where you come from as a Muslim. One constant is that there is something called ittikaf in our religion, which is something that was practiced by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, where in the last 10 days of Ramadan, particularly, he would actually go into self-isolation, if you don't mind me saying that word, in the mosque, and he would spend the last 10 days of Ramadan participating in extra acts of worship throughout the day and night, so keeping sleep to a minimum. And this was something that he would encourage his followers to do, but it wasn't compulsory. So, not everyone has to go to the mosque and lock up for 10 days. But he would encourage people to do this, particularly on the odd nights of the last 10 days of Ramadan. So we're talking about the 21st, 23rd, 25th, 27th of the month. He would encourage people to do it then, because this was a time period in which the Quran was revealed, and he encouraged the Muslims to seek out that night, seek out that anniversary, so that they could perform extra acts of worship and get extra rewards and extra forgiveness from Allah on those days. And scholars have said that if you can only do it for one day and one day only, if you're a very busy person, you don't have the time to go in for those days, then you should seek out the 27th, because they believe that this is the most likely day for Laylatul Qadr to take place.
And what is Laylatul Qadr in Turkish? Sorry, Ertan, for those Turkish.
Kadir Gecesi.
Okay, yes.
Kadir Gecesi, which is believed to be the anniversary of the revelation of the Quran. And then, for Eid, again, it depends on the culture, but for Eid, usually there is an extra prayer in the day, which is compulsory for all men in the community to attend. And it's encouraged for women to attend as well if they can, which is a congregational prayer between Sabah namazı, so Fajr we would say, the official terminology, and Öğlen namazı, so between the dawn prayer and the midday prayer. And this is an occasion where the entire community would get together and they would pray 2 rakat of namaz, prayer, and then afterwards they would listen to a sermon from the imam. And after that, they're just free to go about their day. But since everyone's united in the same place, they'd come together, they'd greet each other. It's a chance to have a reunion with people you've lost touch with. And then after that, people just really disperse and start visiting elders. Elders being the uniting factor in the family. Everyone would go to the house of the elder, have a meal, have a feast. It's a chance of reunion, and I think people in this modern civilization we live in, particularly in the West, where we're all busy all the time, it's just nice to have that 1 or 2 days a year where we can all kind of get together as a family and as a community and just really catch up and give ourselves that sense of belonging.
Thank you, and welcome to Mustafa Qureshi and also to Ahmed Yusuf, who've just joined us. Mustafa Qureshi is a Turkish Cypriot researcher and historian, also co-founder of Cezire Association. Ahmed Yusuf is also a lecturer on Islamic studies, and he's also a co-founder of Cyprus Islamic Association. Before I ask any questions today, it's going to be more of a discussion than more asking questions and answers. One of the things that we need to make clear is there's always this confusion, especially for Muslims and Turkish Cypriot Muslims who live in the UK, is when is Eid going to be and when is Ramadan? Because Turkish people, the state of Turkey and North Cyprus, the Turkish Republic of North Cyprus, like many other Muslim countries as well, they use a calculated system that actually gives the dates of when the moon sighting will begin, when the moon sighting will end, when Ramadan begins, when Ramadan ends, and when Bayram, the Eid, will be. Now, many people, I do follow this, and I've followed the many different sites that you can watch. There's a very big confusion, and sometimes it causes lots of problems within the families when there's lack of understanding. I just need to say, at the present moment in time, for the last 3 years, and this is a message to go out to all the brothers and sisters who do follow this calendar, who do follow the moon sighting, is to make something very clear, and they can make their own research in this. The last 3 years, all of the Gulf Arab countries, including Saudi Arabia, follow a calculated version. No one is seeing the crescent. So this news that you have, oh, someone has seen the crescent on this day in Saudi Arabia, it's really dust in your eyes that they are using a calculated system that's in America, and that will be used in the future unless the ulama there change that. But just to let people know, because the questions asked to me a lot, when is the moon sighted? When is this? But the moon, for sure, if you calculate and if you go onto these websites that actually follow the pattern of the new crescent, the moon definitely will not be seen tomorrow evening. So yes, Ramadan is going to be, the Bayram is definitely going to be on Sunday, and the last day of Ramadan will definitely be on what day? It will be on Saturday, because on Friday night you will not be able to see the new moon. The new moon will be seen on what day? On Saturday evening. Thanks. And I will go now to we'll go to Ahmed Barud in South London, who's also co-founder of Kibris Muslumanlari, which means Cypriot Muslims. How's your Ramadan been, Ahmed?
Thanks, Mazam. Well, as always, it's got its challenges, especially like that it's lockdown now. Like Erkan said earlier, the mosques are closed, and you haven't got that sort of community spirit in terms of going to the mosque, meeting your brothers in Islam as well. But despite that, we've had more of a chance now to do our ibadat at home with our families, trying to like improve ourselves with our families all together. And it has been a really busy Ramadan this year. Even though we're at home, we're still working, and we're doing like different sort of like projects for Ramadan as well. So it's been really great. And I've been trying to like discipline myself in different areas, like whether it be spiritually or in other areas, like so for example, like being less lazy and maybe like being less greedy as well. So trying to cut down on my food as well. So there's many different areas that you can look into whilst fasting, whilst doing your ibadat in Ramadan. And yeah, Bayram's coming up, and it's an exciting time. And so it was a very happy time for me when I was younger as well, actually. I used to remember we used to go to my nana's a lot of the time. We used to see our family there. She used to make us lots of great food. And one of the most fond memories was receiving like money gifts from our elders, like when we kiss their hands. And so those are like quite, classic Bayrams for me. I'm sure many other people can relate as well. And inshallah, that joy returns to our community as well. And Bayram's a special time as well in terms of like reflection, as well as celebrating what you've achieved for the whole month for fasting, which is a massive achievement. It's a time to reflect as well. Like now that I've grown up and I know more about Islam, it's got a deeper meaning for me now, and you can reflect on your achievements, like for example, what you've gained spiritually, also in other areas too. I've heard from someone before that Ramadan's actually it's training for you, for your soul, for your body, for the rest of the year, and it's up to us to make sure we carry on what we've achieved. So you can achieve many good habits in Ramadan, and it's very important to make sure you continue that for the rest of the year. And inshallah, may Allah revive the joy that Muslims have in Ramadan and in Bayram in our community, as well as for all the Muslims. And may Allah help us reflect on ourselves as Muslims and as human beings as well.
Can I just ask a quick question? I know it's not going to be questions answers, but as a teacher and the Ramadan lockdown, you've obviously been at home most of the time during this lockdown. So it's probably the first time you've had like spending the whole of the Ramadan at home, waking up when you want to wake up, hopefully, if you're not working. But it's actually been a different kind of schedule for people. It's been quite relaxing as well. It's challenging, especially the last few days. It's been quite hot and warm and people feeling thirsty. If you had not been on the lockdown, what were the challenges in Ramadan? Waking up early, having to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that and how Ramadan affects you, or how do you work during Ramadan with the school kids in school?
Well, previously, because we've had to go work previously, you have less sleep, from my experience anyway, because obviously you have to stay up during the summer, especially for like the iftars, and then get up for Salah namaz before that to do your sahur, and then to do your namaz as well. But because of that, there is a lack of sleep. However, you do get through it. You do get used to it, and that, I think, for me, that was like the main challenging part of Ramadan. Like while I'm working, in terms of like getting up early for work and whatnot, so missing out on a bit of sleep. However, when I got back from work, I would usually go to sleep, have a nap for about an hour or two, which would help as well. In terms of like talking about Ramadan in schools, we do that every single year, and we, try to get discussions going about Ramadan and different types of celebrations as well in other religions too. And it's just a way to understand each other and just to know the different celebrations we have, different observations we have as well.
I remember a few years ago, and I'm going back a few years ago, I was invited to a few primary schools to speak on religious holidays. So Ramadan Bayram would be one of them, and the other one would be, of course, the next Bayram, which is the Qurban Bayram. And I remember going into they were usually primary schools, and the children were ever so excited when you'd bring the objects like a rug, and they think you like Aladdin's cave, brought like a little Quran reader, and just like a scarf or a little hat that you wear, a tesbih, just to show children some of the Muslim objects in worship. And I remember one child getting up and having like a hand over her face, saying, "Well, you can't drink water as well all day long." And it was like, that was one thing I never forget. It was like they were really intrigued, and they thought, "But how do you do that? You're going to die." They're very little kids, and it was really interesting to see like the expressions on their face and the excitement they saw. And we're very, very blessed to actually live in this kind of society that we can have this, and we can go into schools and teach children from other faiths about our children, and our children can also learn about other faiths. And that's the unity and diversity that we have in the UK, and that's one very big blessing. We are getting a few messages coming through, and one comes from Imran Hartigan, and she says, "I think this Mubarak time has helped develop closer relationship with families who have locked down with their children. Most families are busy working, not getting much time with family, but this is a huge difference." And I totally agree with Imran, and me and Imran go back a long time. And Imran, you're always on my mind. Sorry I never get back to you, but after Bayram, we'll definitely have a long conversation on the phone. Thank you, Ahmed. I'm going to go to Yusuf Ahmed. Yusuf Ahmed is well known in the Turkish Cypriot and the Muslim community. He's a lecturer on Islamic studies, and also he's a co-founder of Cyprus Islamic Association. Yusuf, can you explain to me the whole thing? There's been a lot of stuff that I've seen on social media, people getting very upset that the mosques are closed, but the mosques are closed for our own good. It's not because someone's closing them because they want to deny us our rights to worship. They're closed because they're trying to save our lives. Can you just give me some history? Because in the early times of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Muslims actually worshipped in secrecy, didn't they? Because they were under constant attack. So it brings us back to the beginnings again, how Islam was. Can you explain a little bit about how Ramadan was in the Prophet's time and how the COVID-19 has brought us back to reality? Can you give us some information on that, please?
Sure. I think it'll probably be best to start. Why are we even observing Ramadan? What's the purpose of it? What's the objective of it? And in Surah Al-Baqarah, it states, and I'm paraphrasing here in English, that, "O you who believe or have believed, fasting is prescribed to you as it was prescribed on those before you, that you may attain taqwa." That this is the purpose, this is the objective, this is the reason behind why we observe Ramadan in the first place, to attain taqwa. And taqwa is often translated in some of our modern Qur'ans as fear of God. And this is a mistranslation. Taqwa isn't just about fear of God. It's really a better translation would be God consciousness, to be constantly aware, be constantly mindful of God in all of God's awe and all of God's attributes, including God's love, mercy, and compassion. And in Surah Al-Hujurat as well, it states that verily the noblest of you in the sight of God, in the sight of Allah, is the one who has the most taqwa. Behold, that Allah is all-knowing, all-aware. So taqwa is really the objective here. That's why we observe Ramadan, so everything that we do, every breath that we take, every step that we take, everything that we're doing in our daily lives, that we're constantly mindful and thinking of God. God isn't something that we do 5 times a day. God isn't something that just comes into the mind, when we're going to break our fast, or in the morning when we're waking up to eat food, or when we go to the mosque. God is in here, not in a building, not in a place, not in a certain jurisdiction. God is in our hearts. God is with people. And at the end of the day, a mosque, even the Kaaba, it's a building. Yes, there is symbology. There is, there is a spiritual aspect to it. But even in our tradition, it says that the blood of a Muslim is more sacred than the Kaaba, which is regarded as the most holiest of mosques around the entire world, the houses of God. And so humanity, our lives, us as people, we are more de'ali, we are more important, we are more valuable in God's eyes than buildings, than bricks and mortar. And in fact, the reason we would even go to a mosque and pray together in congregation is more to do with unity. It's more about bringing people together so that people would worship God, and not just in terms of worship, but a mosque is meant to be a community center. It's meant to help the society. It's meant to help people, and meant to be that sort of center of society that helps the betterment of the locals. In this unfortunate time with COVID-19, it's absolutely paramount that we stay safe and that we protect the lives of others. There's no doubt in the Quran that it states that one who saves one person, it's as though one who saves one individual, one person, one human being, it's as though they've saved the entire humanity, all of humanity. And one who kills or murders one person, it's as though they've killed the whole of humanity. And this is a core principle that we have in Islam. And going out for the sake of going out, when one is able to pray at home, when one is able to worship at home, when one is able to observe Ramadan at home, there are people's lives in danger. I've not seen this uproar on social media, but it doesn't sound Islamic to me. In my mind, the lives of humanity come first. After all, we're talking about buildings, we're talking about bricks and mortar. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Yeah, it does. And thank you for that, Yusuf. And thank you for Mustafa Qureshi coming to the show today. Mustafa, can you just tell us a little bit about how we as Cypriots, Turkish Cypriots, of course, and have brought our traditions of Ramadan and Bayram to the UK, and they are still part of our cultural identity today, even if that we've lost some of it, but we still have some elements to our culture that our forefathers had. And can you explain a bit of that, please, to us?
Yeah, of course, I can explain a bit about my own experiences. Maybe from a religious perspective, or from Bayrams, I've had a bit more of a traditional or conservative upbringing. But I always remember the first thing we would do, we'd get up early and go to the mosque and do our Bayram namazı. And then from there, we would go to the graveyards and visit our elders and pray Fatiha for their souls as well. And then from there, go home and obviously you would have been in your nicest clothes at that point, your Bayram urbaları. You kiss mum and dad's hand, and then from there you'd do your Bayram ziyaretleri. So you go around to your elders' homes, kiss the elders' hands, and be excited to receive some money in return for the respect that you showed to the elders. Sweets will be given as well. I don't know whether this is for all Cypriots, but certainly for those from Leymosun, they'll get their
Can you turn up your volume just a little bit if you can?
How is it sounding good now? Is that better?
Yeah, it is actually.
Yeah. All right, get rid of the headphone. Right, so I was going to say, for those who are from Leymosun and other parts of Cyprus, thank you. Our mums and nenes would prepare herse. That was always an exciting part of Bayram. And just really visiting families, and for those of us who are fortunate enough to have our nenes and dedes, it's always a place to congregate with all the cousins would come around, and there'll be the hustle and bustle of running around and being a bit naughty and having fun, really. And that's kind of what we brought in, and there's many elements there. There's respect for elders that's taught to us as part of that Bayram celebrations. There's family unity as well. Sharing love and sharing is also an important part of Bayram as well. But what I have noticed over the years is the Bayrams of past are a lot different from what they used to be. No longer do we see relatives as regular as we used to. I've noticed there's been a shift in our community's focus on celebrations. And I don't mean to judge in any way. Everyone's free to do what they like, but it's just my own observation and my own kind of thoughts on it. And I would love to hear people's feedback on the issue as well. But it seems as though other celebrations are given more precedence over Bayrams, over the Eids. In this country, the Turkish Cypriots seem to give more importance to Christmas than the Bayrams. And certainly, I remember when I was young, we used to get the day off on Bayram. And it seems as though, just from my observation, that many Turkish Cypriot kids don't even take the day off on Bayram anymore. And Christmas is made to be the fun day. And further to that, I've been fortunate to spend Bayrams in Cyprus as well. I usually spend extended times over there. And I've noticed there as well, they don't celebrate Christmas, but there's these other kind of festivals which have crept in, like New Year's, Jadlar Bayramı, Halloween, and all these other ones, and they're seeming to start to build up. The kids are more excited about it. That's what it seems like, especially in places like Lefkoşa. And I feel that a big part of that is because we're not teaching our children why we celebrate Bayram. And without that, it's a bit pointless, isn't it? If you don't know why you're celebrating what you are. So I think it's important, especially in this time of this lockdown that we have, to teach our children. And if we don't know, just we're living in a time of internet. We've got Hussein Hoxha here. You can message him. There's loads of books available in English and Turkish as well. And why are we celebrating this? What's Ramadan? And then we can make it more exciting. I mean, certainly I've got a little daughter, and we've already ordered like toys and stuff for her, and it's all ready for her to give out on Bayram, because she needs to understand that this is an exciting day. It's important, and we're competing. Well, certainly from my point of view, it seems like we're competing against the capitalist festivals that are out there, and the festivals of our own traditions, as I mentioned, things surrounding family and love and sharing, those are just being put to the side.
Yeah, they got lots of positive comments coming in, and people agreeing with you, Mustafa, on that. As I said, today's not going to be just question and answer. It's just going to be like all of us discussing our own experiences. If I could just reply to a few of what Mustafa's comments are. So a lot of Turkish Cypriots that came here, the earliest Turkish Cypriots that came in mass are in the late 50s. All those Turkish Cypriots have been in the UK for over 100 years, but they were just like small groups of people living across the country, and they weren't all situated in London as well. A lot of them were working in mines. Some came over in the military with the British colonial guards. All different reasons. People worked, as I said, in the north. My grandfather first was in Lincolnshire, then made his way down back to London to the family. But what they did do, they actually brought the traditions of their motherland with them. And so one thing that you see is that the first Turkish mosque in London is founded in the late 70s. But before that, Turkish Cypriots were still attending mosques. They were attending small mosques and small gatherings organized by other Muslim populations. I mean, I've got lots of testimonies, and I've done a lot of research on this topic. So people, when they arrived to this country, they didn't eat pork. They were like they were back home. They would go to the nearest kosher butchers. I mean, this is something that people from the older community told me, and some of these people that I've interviewed are not around anymore. But they would only go to Aldgate Market or somewhere in the East End, where they knew there was a thriving Jewish community, and they would only buy their poultry from Jewish people because they knew Jewish people did not eat pork like them. So, and they would go to the famous restaurant like Bloom's, which was a Jewish founded restaurant, and buy their meat dishes there. Also, what they would do, brothers and sisters, if you're watching, it's an interesting one, and you can ask your grandparents if you've got any grandparents over the age of 60, they would tell you that they would actually congregate in Hyde Park. So they would go to Hyde Park. There was a Turkish Cypriot community centre in Soho, which is still there, and it was the Cemiyet binası. They would congregate there, and then from there they would walk in a mass, go to Hyde Park, where they would join hundreds of other Muslims from other backgrounds, Palestinians, Arabs, Indians, Pakistanis, Indonesians, people who worked in the embassies, and they would join in prayer with them. And many of them who had cars would actually go. Where would they go? They would go to Surrey, to the first founded mosque in the UK. They would go to the Shah Jahan Mosque in Woking, and they would celebrate Eid. What's that telling us? They're telling us that, the first people that came over, they held quite tight to their culture for this to happen. They would actually take their children, and they would be served like these curry dishes. A lot of people tell you they would be served by these curry dishes, and some very, very aristocratic English families would actually join as well, just to be, because they were intrigued to see all these Muslims go to celebrate, and then families would then go to Brookwood Cemetery, which is the first cemetery in the UK that homes Turkish Cypriots who passed away in this country. So that's some of the stuff that we did. And Mustafa, my brother's so right. The amazing thing about Cyprus seems very small, but it's very diverse in itself, because before the events of 63 and 74, when everybody was living in their scattered villages from Buff all the way to the Cape of Zaferburnu, which is actually Cape Andreas. So from Dip Buff to Dip Karpaz, there's these hundreds of villages, and some of them have probably never ever met each other. So a person in Buff had probably never met someone in Malta, because the distance was quite far. But they all had their own traditions and cultural identity, bring them back to Ramadan, Bayram. And Mustafa just said one really interesting one. We'd come home, and then what would our nenes cook? Herse. If you ask somebody from Malta what herse is, they say, yuck. I'll never put that in my mouth, So everybody had their own traditions, and that's the beauty of it. So the limasollar, bafullar, and a lot of people in the Troodos mountain areas, all the way to Dilirga, they would make the famous herse. And brothers and sisters, herse was definitely the Bayram yemeği of Cyprus. It was also a düğün yemeği as well. It was a wedding. It's a festival. It's a festival, and it has actually origins all the way back to Anatolia. Now, people in Larnaca, that's very interesting. People in Larnaca would make, what would they make in Bayram? They make like a Bayram pilavı, and I've tasted it thanks to Sevtap Kemal. If she's watching, a really big thank you. I've tried it a couple of times at her house on Bayram. It's like a pilav which has got lots of raisins, almonds, and even fruit in it, and it's delicious. And in the Karpaz area, and Mausa and Galatya area, people will make the traditional zeytin ekmeği and hellim ekmeği, nor börekleri, and they will make, what would they make? They will make kafes. Kafes is like a biscuit, Turkish biscuit with sesame seeds, and this would be made. Now, it's another interesting thing. If you look at the history of the Turkish Cypriot culture, of how Bayram and other festivals were celebrated, our neighbors in Cyprus, our Christian neighbors in Cyprus, would actually exchange with us gifts. And what the gifts would be, because it wouldn't be like a present from Marks and Spencer's. No, it's going to be something you bake. So on the Easter, they make their pilaona, and they give us pilaona. And on the Bayram, we would give them bread, sesame bread, which they actually saw as sacred anyway. And tabii ki kafes, lokma dökülürdü, so the lovely fresh honey lokma. And these things would be exchanged with each other. And we read so many stories that people would actually come and exchange gifts on the days. Another thing that's forgotten as well, on the religious holidays, our Christian neighbors in Cyprus would actually look after our herds and our goats and our sheep for 3 days while we celebrated in the villages, and we would do the same for them at Christmas. So this is a very beautiful thing that we actually brought back. So Turkish Cypriots were not alien when they came to the United Kingdom. So when they came to the United Kingdom, they'd already lived for hundreds of years with a Christian society. So for them, it was like being back at home, but the people were English and not Greek. And so the traditions were kept here for years. I remember my grandmother has never, ever, God rest her soul, never bought bread outside. She used to bake her bread, and she used to call the bread that she used to bake on Bayram ekmeği or Ramazan ekmeği. I know that it was really, really tasty. It tasted even better because people were fasting those days. But these are some of our traditions that we continued here. I think the problem we have with if we were to say about Christmas and Bayram, I think if Bayram was a national holiday in this country, if the UK were to make Bayram a national holiday, then I think there will be much larger observance by the community, by the Turkish Cypriot community for Bayram, because it will then be a bank holiday. But brothers and sisters, if you want this country to observe a Bayram holiday and make it into a national holiday, then we need to get it right. We need to all celebrate the beginning of Bayram together and the end of the Bayram together, or we're not going to get that national holiday. And I'm going straight over to Ali Mullah. Ali Mullah, what's Ramadan means to you? What has it been like for you in lockdown as a teacher as well?
Before I say, can I just say, it always amazes me how much traditional background that you know. So for example, what you're saying about all the traditions of Cyprus in different areas. And you know what? One of my earliest memories of you, Ojo, is you were explaining about the Muslims who conquered, was it Bosnia? And you mentioned that they asked the Sultan to send imams, and then 5 years later they asked him again. I digress. I shouldn't explain that, but just you have a very good background knowledge, Origin. It really amazes me.
That's my favorite story, actually.
Honestly, it's become one of my favorites after you explained it.
It's a beautiful story.
So what does Ramadan mean to me? Well, I think it is a time where we kind of recharge a bit more, because we do have very busy lives, and all throughout the year, we're focused on so many other things. I think, as Ahmet said, it's usually a lot more tiring for us, isn't it? Because we have a lot less sleep. This time it's just been completely different. I think one of my favorite things about Ramadan is Tarawih. So it's a hard day anyway. In the UK, we fast for, 16 hours, 17 hours. And it's such a long day. And then after that day, to then go to the mosque, and, Tarawih might start 10:30, and as it sort of gets towards the end, it gets to the point where sometimes it starts like 11 o'clock. By the time you finish that, you're talking midnight. And then you come outside the mosque, and everyone's tired because you've been standing on your feet for a very long time praying. But that's part of the joy and part of the hardship that makes Ramadan what it is. In that time that you're in the mosque, you're standing up for that hour or whatever it is, you're filling yourself with so much iman. People get emotional inside the mosque. You find a lot of people crying because of the beauty of the recitation, and whatnot.
Ali,
yeah.
Can you explain what Tarawih is? Tarawih namaz. Maybe some people haven't heard what Tarawih namaz is. Maybe you can explain it a little bit.
No, very good point. So, throughout Ramadan, the tradition was with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is that we attend congregational prayers are optional. It's not compulsory. And as Erkan said earlier as well, slightly different tradition, slightly differs of opinion from one mosque to another maybe, but it's you pray, is it 10 rakah or I think some mosques even do 20 rakah?
20,
yeah. Depends on your Jamaat, I guess. But basically you are usually going through the Quran, so it depends on from mosque to mosque, but the objective is that you sort of get through the Quran through the whole of Ramadan. And you're praying 2 rakats at a time. You rest for a moment, then you stand back up. But those 2 rakats that you're praying are generally very long because, the imam or the person reciting at the time will be trying, to get through from the beginning of the Quran to the end. So yeah, it's a very sort of feeling. It's a very imam feeling experience. And then, like I said, you come out of the mosque at midnight or so ever. And you think, I better get to bed, I better get in, but you can't. And the thing is, you don't want to as well. As tired as you are, you're meeting with your friends outside the mosque. I don't know what it's like. For example, in Lucia Mosque, I find that people are having slush puppies at 1 o'clock in the morning, while chatting outside in the street, and it's just such an amazing time to sort of see the people that you don't always get to see. And during Ramadan, you find more people go to the mosque than usual. So you find, relatives or friends that you haven't seen for a long time. It is a really good time for the community. And that's, one of the most important things about Ramadan. You're fasting on your own, you're starving, but there's always that opportunity as well that you're with other people. And what I find as well is it's amazing how well our children do in Ramadan as well. And I'm going to reflect on, when I was a kid, I remember the days were so much shorter that we would fast till 4 o'clock. And I remember starving to death. Like, I could have passed out. Alhamdulillah, I don't know how, my 10-year-old this year has fasted all, inshallah, he's going to fast all 30 days. And he's fasting till like 9 p.m. at the moment. And he doesn't seem to be showing the difficulty that I showed. So I think we have to be proud of our kids as well that, they're doing the right thing and, they do it out of love as well. We don't force them to do it, but it's just something they want to do.
That's beautiful.
That's
sharing that. I was going to just say, because I was young when I started fasting and I'm now half a century old. So I remember like 30 years ago doing the summer Ramazans, and I remember some of the silly things that we'd done as kids as well. Like, so I can say this now. So me and my sister went down to a cafe in the afternoon, and we just got some like eclairs, and we ate the eclairs afternoon, and we went back into our fasting mode, of course. And when I told my nene said, "Hey, Bishaydi," she said, "You didn't wake up for sahur," so it just makes. And she was so lenient about it. It just, when I think about it now, it just, you know what I mean? Our parents have got so much love for us, like they don't even tell us off. And especially our grandparents, like Bishaydi, like he was only 10 years old, so the year after I never done it again. But I can laugh about it now. I got very guilty when I was younger. I've just got some really nice messages here saying, Imran saying about the mosque, it's a place of peace, and I feel that a mosque is a place where we find huge comfort, and I think that's true as well. And then Chanel Ali says, and Chanel Ali has been really, and if you're watching still, Chanel, we're really proud of you, all the hard work you've been doing, working with the other associations, taking food parcels to people all over London, and also for your fasting as well. And she says, this has been my first year fasting in full and working every day. And living on my own, it has been very challenging, but I feel it has brought me closer to my maker, which has been beautiful. Not going to the mosque is a shame, but safety first. Bayramın kutlu olsun to you all. Your talks have been getting me through after the long fasting days, and that's really kind. That I'm really happy. And I didn't mention this last night on Eurogames TV when I was asked this question. How has the month been for you? It's been challenging, but you know what? It's brought me lots of hope as well. So a lot of people are keen to learn, keen to ask, and keen to find out things. And this goes to another someone who's saying here that we weren't taught these things when we were kids, and that's true. This is true for me too. I lived in Cyprus for a few years, and they had Bayram off at school, but it wasn't explained why. Now, this is another thing I have a problem with Cyprus as well, and all my respects to all the government and to the party leaders and our teachers out there. If you're going to have a public holiday, then explain what the public holiday is, or don't have a public holiday at all. For example, when you have this Çocuk Bayramı and there's parades, there's long stories about why people are having Çocuk Bayramı, and I think it was 19 Mayıs, 19th of May. Now, if you're going to be having a day off, for example, celebrating the birthday of the Prophet, which is the Mevlid, which is actually a day off in Cyprus, but no one knows why they're having a day off. It's a bit bizarre. I mean, even the most secular and the most non-religious person in this country, English person, knows that Christmas Day is the birth of a little boy called Jesus, who was born in Bethlehem to a mother called Mary, even if he's never been to the church in his whole life. So we need to really educate people, and the government needs, and the education, those who are in charge of education really need to educate the people. Why do we have Bayram at Ramazan Bayram? Because we've been fasting for a month. Chanel also, and Hani Gulbahar also says, all the learning I had came from home, so she was self-taught by obviously her family. And Chanel Ali is saying again, you have all taught me so much. I agree. We need to learn more about our beautiful religion. And that's really nice to hear. Susanna Ibrahim also says, I have learned so much from you. Thank you so much. Now, the traditions of the Turkish Cypriots go hand in hand with Islam, because Islam has actually formed the Turkish Cypriot culture. We've mentioned this before, and lots of our traditions do come, and they are traced back to other Middle Eastern or even Asian societies. We don't have time to talk about this, but one thing I want to pick up that was made by Mustafa is the visiting of cemeteries. That thing has never died in our culture, and maybe the most popular Turkish Cypriot activity during the Bayram and just before Bayram is actually going to the cemeteries. I can tell you, for someone who's worked in the cemetery, they get packed. People come to the cemeteries, and this, of course, brothers and sisters, comes from the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad. In Arabic, they call the tradition Sunnah. This is a Sunnah of the Prophet because it's the Prophet's saying that go and visit your dead, go and visit your loved ones, your deceased, the day before Eid, or maybe on the morning of Eid, because it's a remembrance of death for you, and it's also a gift to them. And this tradition has always, this is one of the biggest traditions you find in Cyprus, and for the diaspora living in the UK, they would drive all the way up to Brookwood, Woking, furthest point, to make sure their loved ones have had even one Surah Fatiha. read for them on the day, and that's really, really beautiful. Another tradition that we still have is the kissing of hands to our elders, and that comes with respect. Also, want to say one more thing. If Ertan can just enlighten us on this one as well. You know, there is a lot of people who might watch this program later on who have been practicing Islam. There'll be people who have never practiced Islam, but they celebrate, of course, Bayram because it's a part of Turkish Cypriot society. But some of our friends will see an Asian or African Muslim friend and say, "Hey, mate, tomorrow's Bayram," and the African or the Indian or the Asian guy would say, "What is Bayram? Can you explain to us what the word Bayram means, Ertan?"
Bayram is just a Turkish word which kind of means celebration or holiday or festival or however you want to translate it. But Bayram is typically the word that we, not only in the Turkish culture, but also in the Balkan and Caucasus culture that we use for Eid. Eid is probably the proper word. It's the correct terminology, which is more widely recognized throughout the Muslim world. Eid comes from a root word in Arabic, which means something that returns, because it's something that's annual or something that happens twice a year. It keeps coming and going, something that returns. But Bayram just, it means festival. We also say Bayram for secular holidays in the Turkish calendar. It's something that we use interchangeably for both, religious and secular holidays. But it's interesting that you know that when we're meeting with Muslims who are not from our culture, we're so disconnected actually from other Muslim communities that we're not even aware that certain words are exclusive to our culture. I remember the first time, I was about 6 years old, I think, when I first was awoken to the fact that Islam is a global culture. In fact, I didn't even know I was a Muslim. I remember around when I was that age, one of my primary school teachers came up and asked me if I was a Muslim. And I said, no, I'm Turkish, because I actually thought that Muslim was like another nationality. I didn't have any consciousness of religion back then. And then when I went to the park once, I saw he was a Pakistani boy who I used to go to school with. He was saying words like, he was saying mashallah. I heard him say mashallah. So I started getting angry at him. I'm like, why are you speaking Turkish? How do you know our words? Well, these are not our words. These are international words originating from Arabic that all Muslims use, including us. And it's just good to kind of be aware that Islam is an international religion. 1 in 5 people in the world are actually Muslim. And we are part of that. We are part of that. And even we find secular, even atheists in our community, they'll still say words like inshallah, mashallah. It's part of our language, so there's no escaping it. Like, even our language, our very language, is influenced very heavily by Islam and by Arabic as well. If you take out the Islamic terminology and the Arabic terms from our language, we won't be able to speak. Simple as that.
That's a really interesting point that you make clear. So let me just say something to our viewers as well, that the Turkish Cypriot culture also rubbed on to its neighbors as well. So unlike Greece, that tried to clear its Turkish influence in its language, the Greek Cypriots to this day, you might even meet like a 27-year-old, and it's only because he's heard it from his parents. They use the words mashallah, they use the words inshallah, and they use the words kısmet. They use the words kısmet as well. So they've actually taken words from us and they use it. And I also want to make something very clear as well, because people, this is just for more of our more religious Muslim viewers, this comment I'm going to make. The word Eid, brothers and sisters, the word Eid is not only used by Muslims in the Middle East, the Christians also use the word Eid for Christmas. So Christmas is Eid Milad. So they would say, the Lebanese use actually the word Eid. The Coptic Christians of Egypt also use the word Eid for festival. So it actually means festival, just the way we use Bayram for Ramazan Bayram, and then it's become Shekel Bayram, of course, and Kurban Bayram, which is still retained its name Kurban, which means the festival of sacrifice. And Bayram can mean like Ondokuz Bayramı, Çocuk Bayramı, any Bayram you want to give us. The governments are giving Bayrams away these days. So lots of different Bayrams. But the two Bayrams that you find in the Islamic religion, in the Islamic faith, are the two major religious holidays that you have. And also, brothers and sisters, there is a Bayram that we should have and observe every week. It's the Friday. Friday, Juma, is the Bayram of the week. The Prophet said it's the Bayram of the week. So when the mosques are open, if you've never been to the mosque for Friday prayer and you want to go and you're a bit shy to go to, and you feel, what do I do when I go? Just inbox one of us guys. We'll explain to you. But try to go to Juma. Try to go to Bayram Namaz the next time a mosque is open. I'm going to quickly go to Yusuf. Yusuf, traditions in Islam. People think that once you become a Muslim, that any traditions outside of Islam are like alienated. You know, Islam has its own traditions and culture. Have we misunderstood the word culture? We lost you. Can you try again, Yusuf? I'm going to come back to you, Yusuf.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. So is there been some sort of misunderstanding about the word culture? Because we have some people that follow Islam have become very religious, or they are practicing. Let's use the word practicing, and they say, well, you know, there's no, it's only Islam. There's no culture. But is that true?
No, it's not. So Islam is a faith, and Islam transcends culture. It's not restricted to a particular culture, despite the fact that Muhammad, who is a central figure of Islam, was from the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century, born in the 6th century. Doesn't necessarily mean that one has to live their life like a 7th century Arab in order to be a good Muslim. In fact, some of the biggest enemies of Islam at the time wore what we would call traditional Arabic clothes, spoke fluent Arabic, would have eaten Arabic food, would have had beards and all the rest of it. It doesn't mean that all those things don't make you a Muslim. What makes you a Muslim is no doubt what is in your heart. As the word of Islam, the message of Islam, the actions of Islam spread to different communities, particularly in the earlier periods, people were quite good at embracing the different cultures. This is why a lot of our law, a lot of our rulings, a lot of the fiqh would change depending on what jurisdiction you would be living in. So when one of the great imams, early imams of the first 3 generations, Imam Shafi'i, when he moved from Baghdad to Cairo, they say approximately around 80% of his rulings had changed because he understood that he's dealing with a different community, a different culture, a different society who have different customs. In fact, when one gives a fatwa, which is a legal opinion, a verdict by somebody who is qualified to give one, it is, at least in the Hanafi school of thought, it is restricted to a time and a place. One cannot give, a legal opinion, I don't know, let's say in Saudi Arabia or in Turkey, and expect that opinion to necessarily be upheld here in England. We have a different community, we have a completely different society, and one has to understand the role of a mufti is that they must understand the text and they must understand the context, and that's why it's important that they live with those people, that they're actually over here in this country, and they understand what's going on in this part of the world. So when we speak about culture, yes, it has been unfortunately completely misunderstood. There are people that say, oh, you can't do this, oh, you can't do that, oh, this wasn't practiced necessarily in early 7th century Arabia. Just because something wasn't practiced back then doesn't mean that we can't do it. It's only when it comes in in respect of the actual religion itself, the key aspects of the faith, those are the things that we don't change, the fundamentals, the principles. But the way in which it is actualized, the way in which it is manifested, this will no doubt change. It would be too simplistic to just take rulings from 7th century Arabia and apply them today in a completely different country, in a completely different time zone. So we should continue to practice our culture as much as we can, providing it doesn't contradict the core principles and fundamentals of our Islamic tradition. And we should be proud of the diversity that we have in our communities. And we shouldn't be enforcing one culture, whether that's a Pakistani culture or an Arabic culture, onto other people when they become Muslim or if they're interested in becoming Muslim. And I've raised this point before, and I'll finish on this because I love food so much. You know, why is it whenever we go to a mosque here in the UK, every single time, biryani or curry or you know, these kind of dishes, why is it that we're not being... Yeah, well, why not? But why not? Why can we not have fish and chips? Why can we not have you know, other foods from other cultures? Why is it that, you know, everyone has to, where does this idea come from that we will have to dress the same, speak the same, look the same, wear the same perfume? You know, this is ridiculous. We should all be ourselves, and it's okay to have different personalities. And there isn't an Islamic dress. There's no such thing as an Islamic code or ethics or way that we should dress, certain places that we should cover. But we can wear whatever clothes we want. Muhammad was actually gifted a Roman clothing, and he accepted it. So this is what we don't understand about our tradition, is how multicultural it has always been from the onset. And it's only now where there's certain movements that are sort of anti-modernist that they want to, you know, they think that you have to go back, and you don't have to go back. We need to go forward. So yes, we have misunderstood culture on the broader sense, not all of us, some of us, and we need to be more multicultural where possible. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Yusuf. We are going to extend the program, I think, this evening just for a few more minutes, so it will go over 8 o'clock, so I can get everybody's views as well. I do want to say one thing about culture, and it's one of the most popular Turkish Cypriot dishes that we eat today. I'm not really fond of it, by the way, guys, but it's a bit too much for me. But it's pilaona. Has anybody eaten pilaona? Any of our guests eat pilaona? So yeah, it's very popular. And it's called. It comes from the word flaona, and it's an Easter dish. So yeah, our ancestors, who were much more religious and practicing than us, ate Easter and adapted the Easter dish to their own cuisine. Wow. And didn't have a problem with it. A lot of people. So yeah, and last week, guys, who some of our viewers, some of the guys sitting here talking to you today, we broke our fast eating fish and chips, and it was really enjoyable. So you can eating food, as Yusuf clearly said, there is not an Islamic dress. There's an Islamic code of dressing, which is very important. And wherever Islam went in the world, it actually incorporated the national identity of the people. So when it went to India, the sari of the Hindus was adapted to be worn by the Muslim women. When it went to Central Asia, the Central Asian Turkish or Turkic cultures incorporated into the religion, and it went. And a brilliant example. Thank you, Alimullah. I'll give that example. So when when Islam went to Bosnia, and for our viewers, Bosnia is a country in Central Europe. And yes, Islam, although we could argue that Islam came to Cyprus in the time of Hala Sultan, but Islam was only truly established as a state, an Islamic state, in 1571, when the Ottomans, after conquering the southern parts of Cyprus in 1570 and Lefkosia, then took over Malta in 1571 and brought it under the control of the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Balkans is a different story, brothers and sisters. The Balkans, which is an area above Greece, which is known as Albania, Kosovo, Macedonia, parts of Bulgaria, Bosnia, Serbia, and Croatia, came under control of the Ottoman Empire in 1389, and by the beginning of the 14th century, Bosnia was already part of the Ottoman Empire. Now, these people had requested, and these people were not forced to become Muslims, brothers and sisters. There is lots of historical, and I've got lots of books on this topic, lots of historical evidence that in a field one day, thousands of people read the Kelime Shahadat and became Muslim in front of Ghazi Husrev, and they requested that they have Hojas and Imams sent to them. And of course, during that time, it was Fatih Sultan Mehmed, may God be pleased with him, and he took the request and he sent them a letter back saying, in a short time, the Imams will be sent. And this short time lasted about 10 years. And people became frustrated. And people asked, okay, is Fatih Sultan Mehmed having a joke with us? Where are the Imams? When the Imams eventually did come, they saw that the Imams were actually people of their own culture and their own language. He did not send, and I'm really making this very clear, he did not send Imams from Turkey to Bosnia. The Bosnian Imams were sent to Bosnia. So people went to Turkey, they got the training through the dervishes and through the madrasas at the time, and the knowledge was given, and they elected their own muftis and their own sheikhs who had jurisprudence over their law. That's the problem we have in Cyprus today. We have far too many, we have a lack of Turkish Cypriot Hodjas, people who are actually Turkish Cypriot themselves, who identify with the culture, and this is where the problems arise. It's like taking a guy from Gujarat, India, and bringing him to Cyprus and say, you're the Imam of Lefkoşa. Good luck to him. He'll probably last a couple of days and then go back home. So I want to go back to Mustafa now. So as we said, we've got so many different traditions, Mustafa, that all stem back to our roots, deep roots in Islam. And even eating a pilauna, which is like the Easter dish, doesn't affect us being a Muslim. And breaking your fast with fish and chips is cool as well. Is there any traditions that you remember about Bayram or Arife Günü that's actually not so common anymore?
Not so common anymore. Well, there's a lot of things actually. I mean, specific to Turkish Cypriots in London?
Yes, please, yeah.
I just think, generally speaking, observation of Bayram has gone down, and as I said, I think that's a big part of that is not teaching our children, not infusing that excitement about Bayram to our children, and ultimately, if you've been fasting for a whole month, you deserve a big festival, and maybe a lack of fasting, I don't know, maybe a lack of fasting has something to do with not finding this day special, and as I said, it's simple things, I mean, it's swaying from the subject, maybe going a bit of a tangent, but some of the younger generation, maybe even like 10 years younger than me, they'll just call me and they're like, Musti. I'm like, excuse me, Musti? Like, asker arkadaşlık, what do you mean? Do you know me from school, or what do you know me from? And you tell them and they'll still say Musti. And that's not how we grew up. We grew up with saying Abi, Abla. There was a certain level of respect, even if there was an elder to come. Sometimes they'll try and act cool in front of us, but you wouldn't feel comfortable speaking the same way as you would amongst people your same age. And that all goes back, I think, to the cause of why we're losing Bayram, why we're losing observance of Ramadan. We're losing respect for the elders and such. And I think without Islam, there's nothing really grounding our culture that holds these values dear. And that's not to mean that we can't have our fish and chips. We had fish and chips last week with you, Hussein.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it. And it was at Ramadan mosque as well. So it was in a Turkish Cypriot mosque having fish and chips. That's British Turkish Cypriot there. And I think Yusuf also put in a good point regarding that we don't have to be rigid in our idea of what Islam is. And then one of the comments I've just read as well, saying you ask for an halal meal and they'll give you like a curry or something. And it can be a bit off-putting. You go to Tesco's and they're advertising South Asian food.
Yeah.
you know. But
Can I,
really
can
and
I,
truly,
can I,
yeah, go for it.
can I add something to that, Mustafa? Sözünü de unutma. It's like going on a plane and asking for kosher meal. You're going to get a really big variety, sandwiches, but it's absolutely right. You go into a plane, I like halal curry, mate, nothing else. Yani, this is one thing that we need to sort out,
But
definitely.
what I was going to say further to that was, you know, it's capitalism, it's supply and demand, right? And if the Asian community is going to be the main ones who are practicing or observing or showing an interest in their religion, then yeah, Tesco's is going to advertise biryani or whatever else it may be. There's estimates are between 200, even up to 500,000, up to some estimates, including all the mixed race children that we have among us as well, of Turkish Cypriots alone, let alone the Turks in general from Anatolia and Cyprus. If we're not going to represent Islam, then you're going to get your curry when you ask for halal food. You're going to get your curry when you go to the mosque. There's enough of us to make a stand and represent who we are, you know. And you know, many of us, I'm going on a tangent again, apologies, but many of us are frustrated that Turkish North Cyprus isn't recognized. Well, you know, we've completely ignored the Muslim world. We've completely ignored our Muslim brothers in promoting Northern Cyprus. But everyone knows about the Palestinian cause. Everyone knows about the Chechens. In the 90s, everyone was worried about the Bosnians. In the 80s, everyone was worried about the Afghans. And then we wonder why no one knows even about the Cyprus cause, that there's Muslims even on the island. Again, I would say it comes down to us. You're ignoring the Ummet, you're ignoring the Muslim community, and you can't expect people to then recognize you. So yeah, just to wrap up, really, it's just
Can I add something to that, Mustafa? Actually, before you wrap up, because you really gone on a very important point. Now, if you look at the works of Rauf Denktash and sorry, brothers and sisters, the whole idea of this program is a culture. It's not going to be about politics, but it's something that Mustafa said that's really, really important. If we want our community to be recognized, and I'm not just talking about recognition of a republic, because that's something the politicians need to work out. No matter what we do, it's not going to happen. But we can promote ourselves and we can be recognized as a community across the Muslim world. And the universities in Cyprus are doing a great job of this. Now, let me go back to our early forefathers that immigrated to this country. They came from Cyprus. They came to the United Kingdom. I made this very clear at the beginning of the program. They were attending Bayram services. They were attending Ramadan services. They were buying their meat and their poultry from Jewish people. But there was one amazing thing that was happening in the 60s and early 70s. There was this kind of cooperation and partnership and also this kind of love. There was this Ummet love in the UK. So Pakistani brothers and Turkish brothers worked side by side in factories. They buried their dead loved ones side by side. And even if you look at the memoirs of Rauf Denktash and some people like Zekabe, the first advocate of Cyprus in the UK, he actually says that the most times when they were in England, the only people that were actually supporting them, actually giving them support, was the Muslim community, foreign Muslim community in the UK. They were actually the driving force behind Rauf Denktash. They were the ones who were coming together with him. What's going to happen to your country? Because they had similar ideologies, that had similar problems. A lot of these people came from Kashmir. There was a similar problem like Cyprus. And we had a lot of support from the Muslim world. And then we lost that support. And the failure is down to us, not anybody else, but it's down to us because we've ignored those communities because, we don't want to be like you guys. Sorry about that. We want to be more Western. We're more European. And this is not what our forefathers thought. Our forefathers really had a lot of respect for the rest of the Ummah, a Muslim community. And if I can end with you, Mustafa, what you was going to say before I interrupted you.
Yeah, I was just really going to conclude with what you said, really. I want to keep it short. I think Yusuf wants to just add some points as well. But yeah, we just need to be true to ourselves, you know, and you raised a good point as well. But I'll just have to add to that. Cyprus is in the Middle East. Cyprus is just below Anatolia. The only part of Turkey which is in Europe is Thrace, so Edirne and that kind of area. Cyprus is probably close to Africa, right? So we're Middle Eastern, regardless of like political affiliations, and Middle Eastern is Asian. So we just need to get over our hangovers and whatever it is. You can appreciate the West, but we need to be true to ourselves, where we are geographically in the world, culturally, where our ties are, and our religion as well. Just be true to ourselves, really. And yeah, I'll pass it over to Yusuf.
Yeah, I was just going to add one point off the back of what you said, which I thought was a really good observation, and that is that, you know, there is a decline in the number of people that observe Ramadan and Bayram from within the Turkish community. I don't think that's a root cause. I think that's a symptom. It's a symptom of the fact that, unfortunately, as a community, what relevance does Bayram play? What's the point of Bayram and fasting and Ramadan and all of these things if we've completely thrown Islam and Allah and everything out of the window? The moment that we've, you know, decided to just neglect the faith of our community and all the people before us, and just disregard it, all these other things become meaningless. And I think that's the root cause. I think that, you know, we've lost touch, we've lost the connection, we've lost that relationship with our spirituality, with our faith, with our Creator, and that's what's caused this. You know, if people don't even believe in Allah, if they don't understand why, if people have been brought up just to believe and they haven't been given the adequate answers, then they're not going to believe. And if they're not going to believe, what use is Bayram except nothing more than just cultural baggage? It's nothing more than just, oh, this is what people used to celebrate. Fine, you know, maybe I do it, maybe I don't. So the real issue here is, you know, why is it that people have lost that connection with their faith? If people are connected to their faith, they'll be connected to Bayram. They'll be connected to all these other things. It's almost like you've pulled the rug from underneath the feet of Bayram. And actually, that rug was there for a reason. It was there to protect. And perhaps in future sessions or you know, through more conversations that we have with everybody that's watching, and others as well, perhaps we can understand why people have lost that connection and hopefully rebuild it.
I want to go, thank you, Yusuf. I want to go to Alimullah. Before I go there, I just want to read this comment by Sheniz Raif. And again, Sheniz Raif, if you're watching, we want to congratulate you as well. All the hard work and efforts you've been putting in the community. And I did see you on Eurogench the other day. And I'm really proud that I know you, and I've known you for a long time. And you really have been a beacon of hope for a lot of people. And she says, while growing up, we celebrated such lovely Bayrams, but unfortunately, as the older generations have passed, the way we have celebrated Eid has changed, which is such a shame. Now I'm trying to reintroduce it to my children so one day they can pass it on. Before I go to Alimullah, can I just say something about if you want to pass the tradition on to your children, and I know we're all guys here, but even I had it done to me when I was a kid. There was one thing that we don't do anymore, and maybe you can reintroduce that to your kids because it's fun as well. That the day before Bayram, the evening before you put your kids to sleep, there was a tradition that has died down in the last 25 years in the Turkish Cypriot community, was painting the hands of the children with kana and going to bed with your kana on, and then waking up in the morning to wash it to see all the bright colors your hands have become or your feet have become. And today with kana, it's so amazing because you can use stencils and you can make it really fun for the kids. But this has roots, deep roots. It even predates Islam, but every Islamic community in the world does this on Bayram. We're the only community now who's like, it's only the old Kujagare and the old Ihtiyar ladies that do this, and it's something that kids don't do anymore. But I mean, when I speak my mum's generation, that was the most exciting thing. Another thing that we used to do, and I done it for my kids, is make sure that you buy your children clothes the day before Bayram that they will wear specifically on that day. It's special clothes, and it's called Bayram look, and it's like a pair of shoes, socks, underwear, little shirt, trousers. You know what the Turks are like, but it's different now because people wear different types of clothing. But yeah, just buy your kids some stuff and make them feel that it's special. You know, buy the stencil kana, put the kana on the face. If the boy doesn't want it all over his hands, he put it on his little fingertip, and it makes him feel like, you know, that's our culture. And let's keep our culture going. Is there anything you want to add to that, Alimullah? How can we keep a culture going?
Well, I think, like we said earlier, you know, sort of getting together with family. We were speaking about food. I remember one of the things that we used to do was, you know, when we get together at our grandparents' house or our mum's houses, different people in the family would, you know, bring a different piece of food. So someone would bring the potatoes, someone would make homemade jajik or homemade hummus. You know, someone would make the ekmek kadayıfı and you know, the desserts, and there'd be so much choice. But it was a whole thing. So you'd go to your grandparents, all your uncles would be there, all your uncles' children, and it's more than just the money. Because I think as a kid, maybe that's what you're thinking. But you know, as an adult, you reflect a bit more and you think, oh, you know what, are we doing these things anymore? And that's a good point. And I think, you know, I come from, you know, my family at the moment. I've had kids, and you know, my own siblings haven't. So, and not many people in my family have had kids, and so my kids have kind of grown up without that big extended family to celebrate Bayram with. But what we've tried to do is we've tried to keep it alive. We've tried to hold parties, because I think less and less of the Turkish communities at the moment seem to get together for Bayram. And so, you know, we've tried to do things like, you know, hold barbecues in the past. You know, my wife is very sort of, you know, she'll source out Eid balloons and things like that, and what do they call it? The little triangles. I always forget the name.
Little flags or something.
Yeah, you know, the little,
Yeah.
the banners that you put up. So she gets like Bayram banners and balloons and stuff like that. So we try to dress it up because we want the kids to. We don't celebrate Christmas. We don't celebrate Easter. So it's very important to us that those particular days, I do pull my kids out of school, and I'll take them to the mosque with me on that day, because it's very important that they recognize this is our important days. And the other days, you know, as much as we appreciate and we respect everyone else, these are our special days that these kids have to enjoy. So, like you said, you know, toys, clothes. Even now, you know, we're talking about, you know, what would you like for Eid? And I get them to write me a list, and it's a surprise what they might get from that list. But just different things. When Eid is coming, it has to feel special.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Absolutely. And this is where we lack. But I also want to make something very clear, because it would be unfair that even if people are not religious, the observing Bayram is still very popular in the Turkish society, Turkish and Turkish Cypriot society. So I just want to make that very clear that most people in the UK, I mean, one thing I dread about Bayram is WhatsApp messages, because I'm like flooded and I don't ever reply back to them. So if anybody's watching me here today and they always ask me the question, "Ama ne yazmadın bana geri?" WhatsApp, that's why I'm not going to do it, because I don't want to spend the whole day on social media sending messages, the same kind of message, Bayram kutlu olsun, Bayram kutlu olsun, Bayram kutlu olsun. But I do see in that something very beautiful, that people do understand and do recognize that this is a special day. And, you know, Nenes do get that special call on that day. Nefise is saying, thank you to you all. I have thoroughly enjoyed listening and learning more about Islam, especially in the context of being a Turkish Cypriot and the traditions that exist in our culture. I hope this program continues beyond Ramadan, and I have felt really enlightened and very much connected to our faith. Thank you, Nefise Hussein. That's really beautiful. That's made my day. Yes, there has been a great response from the community. My 15-20 minutes I do on the Turkish Cypriot UK page, I want to really thank the admin on there for allowing this to happen. They even want me to do something Bayram, no problem. Getting 500 to 600 views a night can't be bad. It's good. People are interested. People are really, really interested, and people do have faith. Now, there's one thing about our generation and our grandparents' generation. I use my grandparents' generation because it feels much older. Now, I remember my grandmother, when I first told her what Adam atheist did, and she said to me, "Ne demek did atheist?" I said, "Allah namaz." And I won't tell you what she said about the man, but to them, it was never heard of. You can't say that. You don't have to pray. You don't have to fast. You don't have to go to the jami. But you never said there was no God. There was no such thing as atheism in the Turkish Cypriot culture of our grandparents, at least, or when our fathers and mothers were young. These ideologies, these things have really affected the community, not only our community, but every community. And this is what we're challenged with. We're challenged with people that don't believe in God and forcing it really to their children, just the way people say, but Muslims are forcing their children to fast, forcing their children to go to the mosque. It's not fair. But people that don't believe in God as well are forcing their children to be godless, their children to ridicule Islam or any other religious beliefs, to say that. That's what we need to tackle. We need to educate people. And the foundation of this religion is oku, recite, learn. And the Prophet says to learn knowledge, go as far as to China. Now our forefathers decided to come to the UK. Not a good thing, but we're here. And we have the lousy weather, but we've got amazing weather. But we do have one thing. We have the freedom of worship here, the freedom of thinking, the freedom of expression. And that's a beautiful thing. All of us come from different backgrounds, but we're allowed to come on here this evening to tell our community about their religion. Ahmed Baruk, we're going to close very soon. What would you like to say?
I think everyone had a really good point on the show. And just to reiterate, just try to revive our traditions that we used to have. And also not just that, learn about our traditions and what they're about, what their background is. And to accompany that, I think it's very important as well to cultivate the love for Allah, the love for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And then you would naturally be more inclined to want to learn more about Islam, like I have, like many other people have. And yeah, just to finish off, Bayram Shimdi and Eid Mubarak to everybody.
Anybody want to give the Bayram message, Alimullah, to the community?
Just carrying on with what Ahmed said as well. The Prophet Muhammad said, alayhi salam, that you haven't truly believed until you love me more than your parents. And we do need to see the importance of a statement like that, and what does it mean? So we do have to educate ourselves. The more we learn about the character of the Prophet Muhammad, the more you learn about the kind of things that he did, it really fills you up with what kind of person he was. And unfortunately, the media feeds us a completely different image that is completely incorrect. So I won't say too much, but other than that, everyone, Mutlu Bayram lad, Bayramınız mübarek olsun. Happy Eid to everyone.
Thank you. And Ertan Karpazlı, would you like to give a message to the Turkish community for Bayram?
Well, not so much to do with Bayram, but more to do with this lockdown. In the time that we've been in this lockdown, a lot of my friends have complained to me that they're feeling lonely, because obviously they usually go out, they socialize, they work, they're meeting people. And now that they're stuck at home doing nothing, they've actually realized that they don't have anyone in their life that makes them feel desired or wanted. They feel very lonely for the first time. And actually, before the lockdown, this has been the reality of many people all over the world, especially nowadays in this modern culture that we live in, especially in cities. And I just want to let people think that after the lockdown's finished and you go back to work and you go back to your cafes and start socializing again, don't forget this time period. And especially don't forget that this lockdown, for a lot of people, the loneliness that you feel in this time period is the reality for a lot of people, regardless of whether there's a lockdown or not. So let's take this as a lesson to improve our behavior and reach out more to people. And what better time to do that than Bayram, than Eid? So, an Eid Mubarak to everyone from now. It's been really great talking to you all with these other hosts on this Ramadan Reflections. And I hope that this becomes an annual thing, Ramadan Reflections, because this year it's been very successful. And thank you, Hussein Haji, being a great host. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ertan. And maybe you can host it next year. give me more time to talk. Tamam Mustafa Qureshi, benim sevgili kardeşim, what would you like message to the Turkish Cypriot community watching today for Bayram?
Bayram is our holiday. Let's make the most of it. We're in lockdown, so try and keep safe, but just do something different. Go for a walk with the family in the park. Give your nenes and dedes a call on WhatsApp or Facebook if they've got it. Have a halal Bayram, right? Put that bud away. Have something else. Have some ayran, yeah? But make sure you're having fun. And thank you all for watching. Keep me in your prayers, please. And love, peace. Bayram Mubarak also.
Yusuf, any Bayram message? Did you give your Bayram message? You did.
I haven't yet. I'd just like to say that Bayram, one of the most important things for Bayram for me is unity. Right now we need unity more than ever with everything that's we've been facing as a community, and love as well. I mean, what would all of these festivals be if we weren't together? Whether that's physically or spiritually, and I'm grateful for my upbringing. I'm grateful for my culture. I'm grateful for, my grandparents and my great-grandparents. Even some of the people I speak to in my own köy, Lurujina, Akıncılar, many of them have lost connection with their faith. But I'm grateful that some of my grandparents, at least, held on to the fundamentals, because even though they came to this country, they saw the good in what they had, and they didn't want to just throw that away and disregard it. And I'm grateful for that. I'm very honored to have been part of this show. I also hope that it's an annual thing. I want to thank all the viewers for watching, for all their comments, all their questions. I hope it's been as useful for you as it has been for me. And a very special thank you as well to Hussein Hoxha, not just for this show, but all the great work he does in our community. May Allah continue to preserve you, and we all have so much love for you. And I have love for all of you on this show, actually. It's been absolutely fantastic. Çok teşekkürler ve herkese şimdilikten bayramınızı mübarek olsun diliyorum.
Susanna, thank you as well. Thank you for those kind words, Yusuf. Susanna Ibrahim says, it's so refreshing to hear you all talking, especially as you're all so young. Thanks. I hope this is a revival of our culture and our religion. Bayramınız kutlu olsun. Eid Mubarak. Allah hepinizden razı olsun. Amin. And I will say amin to that. Before we close, I want to say something. I want to share a story I heard when I was a very young boy about Bayram. And I actually thought it was a story. I just thought my grandparents were just telling me so I could be a good person. I remember the story was actually told by my nene. And the amazing thing was my nene could not read and write. And my nene, brothers and sisters and viewers, could speak only a handful of Turkish. My other grandparents knew, but my maternal grandmother never knew hardly a word of Turkish. But she knew this story, and she relates this story to me that it was a Bayram morning, and the Prophet Muhammad left his house, peace be upon him, to go and perform the Bayram namazı, and the whole of the city was waiting for him. So he passes the house of his daughter, Fatima, and he picks up his grandchildren, Hassan and Hussein, and he puts them one on the left and one on the right, and he's carrying them to the mosque. And they look really beautiful. They're wearing the best garments. Their hair is combed, oiled. They're wearing their white garments, and the Prophet Muhammad looks so handsome, in the words of my grandmother, who, although she never saw the Prophet and could not read about his life, she was in love with this man. And while he was walking and people were waiting for him, he saw a small child. The story says that he saw a small child sitting on the side of the road or the track, and he was covered in dirt, and flies were on top of this child. And he said, "Who is this child?" And they said, "It's an orphan. He has no mother and no father." And he picks up the child, and he returns, and he takes the child to his daughter's house, Fatima's house, and says to her, "Wash this child and prepare him for the mosque." And so the people are becoming anxious at the mosque because they're waiting. Where's the Prophet? Why is he delayed? Why is he, he tells us not to delay the prayer, and he's not coming on time this time. And the child, the young boy, is crying because for the first time he's been showered with this kind of love and Fatima puts clothes that belong to Hassan on him and perfume that belongs to Hussein on him and puts the oil in his hair, and he looks like this little prince when he comes out of that bathtub. And the Prophet takes him and says, "You're not an orphan anymore, you have me. Would you like me to be your father?" And the boy says, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I'm the Prophet of God, Muhammad." And the boy cries in joy and says, "I would love you to be my father. And would you like to have brothers?" And he says, "Who are my brothers?" He said, "Would you like Hassan and Hussein to be your brothers?" And he said, "I'd love Hassan and Hussein to be my brothers because they're your grandchildren." And then he puts the boy onto his shoulders, he puts it onto his back, and Hassan and Hussein holding his hands, and he walks into the mosque like this. And then he tells people, those of you that shower the orphan with love on the day of Eid or before Eid, and this is very important, brothers and sisters, that we should give to the poor, even if we have poor people in our family, even if we have uksuz or yatim in our family, we shower them with love, because the Prophet said, "You will be with me on the day of judgment." Now, I thought that was just a story to make me feel a bit more soft-hearted towards orphans when I was a kid. Years later, when I grew up and I went to Juma Namaz in a mosque in London, in Regent's Park Mosque, the Egyptian Imam goes onto the minbar and relates this story that was told to me by my grandmother, who was illiterate. And that's where I want to end the story today. You know, do some good deeds, be kind. Look at the life of the Prophet. Look how he delays the prayer for one orphan. How many times do we walk past people and just ignore them? We don't know what they're going through. Don't ignore people. Shower people with love and show that people mean something to us. Take an example. If we're always talking about following the sunnah, follow the sunnah, follow the Prophet, be good to one another. Bless you all. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with a new show, with new questions and answers and new topics for those who want to learn more about their culture and their religion. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.